Recording in progress.
Okay, I guess this means that we're going to start. So, next speaker is Jihao Liu from Northwestern University. We'll talk about Shokurov's ACC conjecture for mlds dimension.
Okay, so first I'd like to thank Professor Katini for giving this talk and thank the organizers for the invitation. And I would like to thank Shokurov, but Shokurov is not here. But anyway, I'll just get started. Probably he's familiar with his conjecture and don't want to listen for several minutes. But anyway, let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about Shokurov's ACC, the signature chain condition conjecture for mlds, the minimal log discrepancies in dimension 3. And well, let's get started. So we work over C, the complex numbers, and very so for characteristic P results, I just refer to Professor Yuji's talk. And this talk, we are mainly talking about the results, but not the proofs, because there are many results to talk about. And it will be divided into 4 parts. The introduction part, a brief introduction to mlds, and I'll talk about the main results, the ACC for mlds for terminal spherical pairs. That's the recent group work with Jingjun Han and Yujie Luo. And then I will talk about some relation on our results and some kind of correlate or some linear results with the outputs. And that's a group work with Jingjun Han. And finally, I will talk about some precise calculations on mlds and some precise values. I mean, some of them are quite interesting, and I will show you. And those are joint works, one with Liudan Xiao and the other with Yujie Luo. And so let's get started for the introduction. I believe we have talked about the log discrepancies multiple times. They stay in each talk, Yujie's talk, and Professor Nakamura's talk. So let us briefly recall. So I may use some different notation here. So anyway, let's say we have a pair XP. So when I say a pair, I always mean that the boundary B is effective, but it can be an R divisor rather than a Q divisor. And let's say we take a log resolution of the pair. Then we can write K vector dy to the pull back of K vector B, and the log discrepancy of any divisor Y can be defined as 1 minus the coefficient of B1. So we will then define the minimal log discrepancy of this pair. I'll write X including small x B. It will be considered the MLD, and it's defined as the minimum of the log discrepancies of all the divisors centered at the given point small x. And of course, in many scenarios, we don't want to care about say singularities or terms. We maybe want to care about the global case. Well, then we'll also have a similar definition. We find the minimal log discrepancy of a given pair, but we don't specify the given point small x to be the minimum of all the log discrepancies that are exceptional over x. So this is just the basic definition. And we have Shokurov's conjecture for mlds that also has been mentioned several times these days. And I will write 2 versions here because one is the full version, the other is the very most simplified version. So let's first talk about the full version. It says, let's say we give you a positive integer D and set we satisfy the DCC, the descending chain condition. Then it's a conjecture that all the mlds, X including small x B, with fixed dimension D and coefficient in gamma, they satisfy the ACC. And this is the full version. The simple version says that, well, we just don't want to care about those DCC coefficients. I mean, those coefficients look nasty. I mean, some people don't like coefficients. So we just remove the coefficients, and the coefficient that is 0, and then here, gamma equals 0, and we just and we only consider the global MLD. That means that we also don't specify the given point small x. Then it is also conjecture that this set satisfies the ACC. And clearly the full version implies the simplified version. So I will focus on both versions in this talk. But anyway, let's first talk about why this conjecture is important and why many people care about it. So I guess in previous talks, there are many people quite important. So one important thing is that ACC conjecture, together with Ambrose lower semi-continuity conjecture for mlds, will imply the combination of cliques. I write it as the TOF here, and that's proven by Shokurov. And also recently, it's known that, well, it can be applied to the boundedness of Calabi-Yau varieties in some works. And like very recently, maybe just this year, I think like in a recent seminar in Tsinghua, I think Picard announced some results on precise effective entity for anti-absolute canonical systems in dimension 4. And that will rely on the structure of MLDs in dimension 3. So which I think is also an application. But besides all these things, what I will say is that I would just say it is an ultimate question in dimensional geometry. And just as George Mallory said, because it's there and because the question is there. And why the question is that even a multivariable calculus undergraduate can understand the definition of the MLD of a given pair. Question. That's the guy who climbing Mount Everest. Yeah. So anyway,
I wanted to climb and die.
yeah, yeah. I will not be regretful if I try to prove this to the end and die. But anyway, I mean, this is just because you just think, even a multivariable calculus undergraduate can understand the definition. For MLDs, well, but maybe only for smooth strings, right? I mean, they may not understand what an algebraic multi is, but they can understand what is C to the power of D, right? And they can compute MLD. But even in this scenario, we don't know the indices for MLD for such pairs, even in dimension 3. I will talk about some results of that in dimension 3 later. Well, so anyway, I would say it's a fascinating question. It's very understandable, but it's extremely difficult. So let's talk about some known results on this conjecture. Some of us have already talked about by Professor Ishii and Professor Nakamura. But let me just make a quick summary. So I will just write down the results before 2018 because, well, the next result I'm going to talk about will be in 2019. So that, and there are not many results before 2018. So you'll see that only very few cases are known. First is the third case by Professor Yujie and Professor Shokurov, independently using different methods. And it's also known, so Professor Katin told me that he had an alternative on public proofs with Professor Kerner. And we also know the long toric case, so be careful here. So by the long toric, I mean the boundary also must be toric. So just as I mentioned before, if you have a smooth variety, but with no toric boundary, then it's open in dimension 3. And also very prove that when the boundary is 0 in an earlier paper. And it's proven by Kawakita that if the germ is fixed, you can see that even if the germ is fixed, we can only prove the case when the boundary is finite. So maybe that should be gamma rather than B. But anyway, so that should be gamma rather than B. And even when the germ is fixed, we cannot prove the conjecture in full generality. And the final conjecture case is actually highly non-trivial and was only proven in 2011. I think the paper was probably 2014. And there are some special cases in the 3. So I did them out and to compare them with the later results. So the first case was by Shokurov, who proved the exceptional case when the boundary coefficient set is the standard coefficient set. That's in his paper in 2000. And the next case is the case when X is smooth and the pair is canonical. So that's proven by Kawakita using some method on generalities. And the last case is the case when gamma is finite and the pair is canonical. And that was proven by Nakamura. So here's the case. So these are all the results. Are there any questions? Or I just messed up with myself. Okay, anyway, let's continue. So these are all the results before 2018. In 2000, and I'm going to focus on dimension 3. So that's the reason why I started 2018 because 2019 we have this result by Jiang, which I think is very important. So this result is well, it's only one line. It says there exists a positive real number epsilon such that the minimal log discrepancy of let's say the Q-Gorenstein threefold is not contained in 1 minus epsilon to 1. That is saying that if X is non-canonical, then its MLD has a gap from below away from 1. And that is fascinating. I mean, it seems to be having very strict restrictions. But despite the restriction that the boundary is 0, Xiang's theorem is the first step in proving the ACC for MLD in dimension 3 for general non-canonical singularities. So this is actually, I mean, because you can see that like the dimension 2 case was proven well 30 years ago, but the dimension 3 was very recently. So it's actually very typical in dimension 3. So now I guess that should be the introduction part, and then I'll move on for the main result of today, which is my recent group work with Jingjun Han and Yujie Luo. So what they said is that let's say we fix a decision set gamma. Then there exists a positive real number delta, which only depends on the set gamma, such that this set of MLD. So everything, let's see, everything here are the same. So it's just the usual MLD set. But let's say if the MLD is greater or equal to 1 minus delta, then it will satisfy the ACC. So if you think that this is actually a fascinating result, by that, because let's just look at the progress right before. So here I draw 2 big number axes which are not represented, not drawing in the precise way. But anyway, you can see that when drawing the DC set, well, I mean, we actually know nothing about MLD in dimension 3. We know it cannot be greater or equal to 3, but that is all we know. And if the boundary set is equal to 0, well, we know it up to 1. This is well, so this is by I think this is just by the work of Kamata, and also to reach 3 we need the work of conjecture, which hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And for Jiang's result is that well there is a small number delta and you can deal with it. But I mean, for the data set it's totally not possible. And what we know is that well, what we can do is that well, what we can do is that we can directly treat the density coefficient the same as the no coefficient test. So this is handleable. And you know, this like I mean this is a big step to prove this.
Because data is not very different. Like this ACC.
Yes.
Like just 1 quarter. Because you don't know if it's wrong.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if I cannot clear this. So I mean, so the delta clearly. So clearly the delta. So yeah. So clearly this delta must depend on gamma. Yeah.
So like if like for example, if there exists such a delta, then you automatically decrease delta so that there's only 1 point or no point.
This equation is decreased upon the
Yeah, sure. I mean, so what I'm saying is that first we fix that gamma, and then for any such gamma we have such delta, but that delta needs to reduce gamma. We cannot find a good compound. Yeah, that is what says.
I think what that's trying to say is that because you have this ACC for this set, if you decrease delta, then this set like up to 1 million.
Yes, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yes, definitely. I mean, it will be empty, and that's actually some good point. And I will talk. I mean, so you will see that I have the first part about some kind of implicit computation. And
you would have some description of data dot. Then it may not just one.
yes, so I mean, so I will tell you that there, in some cases, there will be some explicit description. That's what I'm telling you, but that's later in this talk. Okay. So anyway, let's continue. You can see that this result again also implies all the previous results in dimension 3. Well, maybe not often, but anyway. So as I mentioned, if the boundary set is 0, is by Jiang and by Kamata and Markovitch. And when gamma is finite by Nakamura, and also mean when gamma is finite, mean we allow delta to be 0, but I mean, I don't allow delta to be 0 here. And also the axis smooth delta is equal to 0 is the calculated result. You can interpret things in that way. And of course, I mean, also Shokurov's result on extraordinarities with standard coefficients cannot be implied. But that was already improved to arbitrary coefficients in arbitrary dimension in my joint work with Shokurov and Han, but that's out of the topic for today. So anyway, that theorem actually also have tons of applications, and I will just leave them out and cover them in this talk. So the first result is written here, as I write on the slide. It says, for any given PCA set gamma, you can always find a positive integer big N depending on gamma, such that for any canonical threefold germ with boundary coefficient in gamma, there always exists a canonical N complement of the given pair XB. So, well, so some of you may not understand what's the theory of complement, but I mean, you can just think that it is a special case of Shokurov's boundedness of epsilon N complement conjecture, and I don't have time to explain what complement is. But anyway, another important application for today is that if we treat gamma to be 0, that is that we don't have any boundary coefficient, then it's just the rate, provided the rate is the general element. And in that case, we can take our big M to be 1. That is exactly what a general element says. And although we cannot expect this big M into 0 for any gamma, this M is computable, provided that, well, it's a finite set in a finite set of rational quadrant.
So what do you mean with computable? Because all these things can be computable.
What do you mean?
Is it like a closed formula?
Yeah, there will be a formula. Yes, there is some kind of addition which may not be explicit, but that can be precise. Yes, sure.
So we divide that and gamma, the integer numbers, then it depends on that.
All right. And the next one is, well, we can prove ACC for 8 LC thresholds in dimension 3 for any A equal to 1. And again, I don't have time to explain what is A LC threshold, but you can just think this is a generalization of the ACC for log canonical thresholds, which was proven by Heckerman and Xu in arbitrary dimension, and also a generalization of the ACC for canonical threshold. I mean, the canonical threshold was also proven in our paper and also independently by Jingjun Han, and a special case in another paper of Jingjun Han independently. And we can also have a nice description of the set of accumulation points of threefold canonical thresholds. So this is, well, so clearly here we need to have some restriction to the boundary coefficient set. We have 0 boundary and we are respect to well divisors. And we can know that the accumulation points are to form 0 union 1 over n, where n is equal to 2. So this is also in our paper and also independently by Jingjun. So the next application is this one, and I really like this one because it's actually plays an important role in our proof. So I will call this a uniform boundedness of mlds. And what it says, so this may not be complicated, so I will probably spend more time on it. So it says that we again fix a DCT set gamma. Then what you know is that there will exist a positive integer depending on gamma, such that for any terminal threefold germ with this is the coefficient, and let's say x is congruence time, then there will be a divisor which computes the MLD. This MLD equal to A means that it computes the MLD. And let's say the log description of E with respect to F itself has an upper bound as L, and L only depends on gamma. So I mean, this is actually I mean, some kind of conjecture, and the analog of this was actually conjectured by Han to be true for any QRT pairs and in all dimensions. I mean, in other words, I mean, I don't write the out, but it means that we want L to only depend on the dimension and gamma, and we don't need such terminal assumption. And Shokurov actually originally conjectured this, that, well, I mean, if the boundary is 0, then this L should exist. That's the so-called boundedness of MLD conjecture. And it's also conjectured that this is equal to the dimension of X. And but in this case, it's not known in dimension greater or equal to 4. And also we have Mustafa Nakamura's conjecture saying that, well, so they conjecture says also the analog that such L should exist, but they only conjecture the case when X is fixed and probably the gamma should be finite. And that's a conjecture proposed in the paper of Mustafa and Nakamura. So yeah, so this is another application, which means that we can partly solve Mustafa Nakamura's conjecture, but it's often in some very stronger version. Question.
So your L gamma, if you require gamma to be 0, then is the L gamma you obtain is the 3 or not?
I mean, if gamma is
If gamma is 0, is it like is the L number to be?
Yeah, that is 3, and that's improved by Mark-Sherry. Yeah, Mark-Sherry, yeah. Okay, and the next one is application to Shokurov's index conjecture. We said, okay, so here we need to restrict our boundary coefficient to be a TCD set, but as rational numbers, right? Because what we want to show is that if the dimension, the coefficient, and the MLD are both given, are all given, then for any pair with fixed dimension, TCD coefficient, and the fixed MLD, it should have bounded Cartier index, bounded local Cartier index. Ah, okay, yeah. I mean, there are many notations here, so yeah, probably, yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not M times our LD. Okay. I see. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So but anyway, back to our topic. So what we can show is that Shokurov's index conjecture also holds in dimension 3 when A is equal to 1, and also the X terminal. But here I write X terminal is because if X is not terminal, then well, A is equal to 1 implies it should be canonical. But in this case, it's already proven by Kawakita that well, MKX is linearly fixed to 0 near X for some M between 1 and 6. So the next one is that, well, so since ideal adic MLD is also interesting, and I refer that to Professor Nakamura and Professor Fisher's talks, we also have this following theorem that, well, all previous theorems hold in the ideal adic version. And finally, we have this application, which is not related to singularities, but a global result. This says that the set of non-canonical non-collateral threefold pairs with DCC coefficients, they are not bounded model slopes. And when the boundary set is 0, is proven in the paper of Jiang, and the binomial boundedness, but not bounded of model slopes, that was proven in that 5% paper should be Chen, Trable, Han, Jiang, and so on. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's for our results on ACC for terminal threefolds and its applications. And are there any questions? Did you prove model flops? Yeah, sure. It's not. So, all right, okay. So the next, I'll move on to the third part of the talk. Is that, how can that be useful and not only restrict to a local question, right? So, and just as I mentioned, one important part for MLDs is that, recall that ACC for MLD plus lower synchronous for MLD, they imply termination of sticks. But we can ask this question. So, do we need the full power of ACC and lower simultaneity to prove the termination of sticks, right? So I mean, right, I mean, they are both very hard conjecture. Most is open in dimension greater or equal to 4, and if you say it's open in dimension greater to 3, but of sleep is well known in dimension 3. So, well, I mean, can we make the conjecture we need to use little simpler? So that's the natural question to ask. And actually, it's indeed true. So what do you know? So in the paper of Shokurov, actually you will see that we only need the finite coefficient case of the ACC conjecture. And secondly, in dimension 4, we actually do not need the lower continuity conjecture, and we only need the ACC conjecture with mlds between 0 and 1. And this truly inspires us to consider the specific structures appearing in a sequence of sleeps. And therefore, we will try to follow this idea and we'll get this result. So this is in an ongoing work of myself and Han. And I will explain this for a while. So this says, let's say, again, we give you an arbitrary DC set guy. But let's say we additionally fix a positive, well, maybe not positive, a non-negative integer n. Then, for any threefold pairs at B, such that the set of coefficient B belong to gamma, and well, then we have this condition says that the number of different log discrepancies that are contained in 0 and 1, that this number is less than equal to n. So we give a bound to the number of non-terminal places, or maybe non-terminal places. Then we know that MLD belongs to any set. So what I want to say more clearly, so it should be we bound the number of different log discrepancies. And this is actually something very tricky because first, if n is equal to 0, it's just the Hundred law, right? Because I mean, Hundred law says that ACC for terminal variables holds, and n is 0, it just says that. And secondly, we'll compare this result with this other result made by Professor Shokurov in 1996 when I was still not born. And in this case, it's quite similar, but it's stated in slightly different ways. So what we need to fix is that the first, we still need to fix some positive real n. Second, we need to fix a positive real number epsilon. So this positive epsilon is important. And what they say is that for any threefold pair at B with B in gamma, and let's say the number of divisors that are external over X, and with log discrepancy not less than equal to 1, but less than equal to 1 plus epsilon is less than equal to n. Then MLD belongs to an ACC set. So let's view the differences. So first, here we have this 1 plus epsilon, but in the previous setting, in what we can prove, we can remove that epsilon and let epsilon be 0 actually. And secondly, you can see that, like here, we only bound the number of different log discrepancies, but we don't bound the number of divisors. In Shokurov's paper, we need to bound the number of divisors. So if you think about this, let's just think about the dimensional 2, right? So let's just think about, let's say you have dimensional 2 dual singularities. Then any dual singularity, I mean, so belongs to our setting. But it's clear that we can say duals they consider AN and DN and D6, D7, D8. And clearly, only when it's bounded, it belongs to the classes of Shokurov. To the set of pairs, we are talking of like 6 carried. So yeah, so actually they are quite different, and I mean, as you can see that like the class of singularities where Shokurov can deal with Shokurov actually proved that they have bounded indexes, but for our setting we do not. Okay. That's actually very easy because if you look at the length of the two contacts of A and G, and they are unbounded, most infinity. So there will be an unbounded number of divisors, so that big N cannot exist. So it's actually very simple. And okay, so but you will see that actually Shokurov's paper is actually already a key step in the proof of terminal of leaves in dimension 3. And our result actually does not rely on Shokurov's paper, so well, but I will not say that they gave a new proof to the terminal of leaf number 3, because you will see that the complexity of the proof is far more greater than Shokurov's 96, like well, I mean, if we sum all the papers together, that can be over 200 pages long, and I'll now say it's a new proof. So. But still, this will give us some inspiration to simplify the necessary ACC that are needed for higher dimensional termination of this. And with this in mind, we will have this definition. So we will call this pair SP to be ENC. So this ENC, so it already appears in the paper of Jiang, and he called it extremely non-canonical, but I guess Shokurov told Han last week that maybe it should be called exceptionally non-canonical. So, but anyway, it's still ENC. So I'll just say it's ENC and leave it here. And appearance of ENC is clearly MLD is less than 1, meaning that is non-canonical. That's where NC comes from. But where the E comes from, it comes from that there is only one divisor with log discrepancy less or equal to 1. So yeah, and you can see that we can prove that the terminal of leaves in dimension D, but only for the terminal case, plus anything for E. Is there any question? Are there any questions? I guess there's maybe some questions in the. I mean, no one's typing anything. So I'll just continue. So anyway, you know that the terminal of leaves in the D, but only for the terminal cases, together with the ACC for extremely or exceptionally non-canonical pairs with finite coefficients. They together can prove the terminal of leaves in dimension D. And moreover, if you are in dimension 4, then because the terminal of leaves is known by papers of Fujino, we only need the ACC for extremely or exceptionally non-canonical pairs with finite coefficients to prove the terminal of leaves in dimension 4. And just a reminder that our theorem, like my theorem with Han, clearly implies the ACC for extremely non-canonical pairs or extremely non-canonical pairs, whatever, in dimension 3. And that was also known for the usual pairs. And I guess question. So here I mean that terminal of leaves of dimension D, but we restrict to terminal case. Yeah, so that's clearly that is KLT or LC. Any more questions?
This is the most usual difficulty.
Yeah, probably technically, yeah. Probably. And let's see. All right, so now we come to the last part of this talk, but not really. Not really. I mean, like there are no unconditional results. It is a conditional. Yeah. Let's see. But why can't I change pages? Let me see. Why can't I change pages? Okay, here we go. All right. And finally, so for this part, let me just remember that conjecture of Shokurov is only last week in the John Hopkins seminar here, and we said that any epsilon LC ENC pairs with fixed dimension and this coefficient, they should have bounded local indices. So I mean, this is actually the part of it where I would like to emphasize is that if you compare here, I mean, like here, we want the ACC for extremely or exceptionally non-canonical pairs. But I mean, like here, in this case, it is conjectured that those pairs actually should have bounded local indices. And actually, bounded local indices, and they should somewhat imply the for mlds, at least in the finite coefficient case. And you will see that in this case, what you are seeing that we clearly cannot prove this, and it is much stronger than the ACC conjecture for mlds for ENC pairs. However, this tells us that actually what we want to care about is only a small class of pairs. I mean, those classes are expected to have bounded indices, and we only need to prove the ACC for those pairs in order to prove terminal of flips in some sense. So that's something which I would like to emphasize as a question.
You mentioned that they have a conjecture the MLD some portion of the
I mean, bounded local indexes, I would just consider it similar to the local fundamental group. And let's see. And the last part of this talk is what I want to emphasize. It's about the estimation of some explicit commutations. So let's just recall this theorem. So this is the theorem which I worked out the ACC for MLDs for terminal surface. So what you know is that let's say we fix a disease as gamma. Then there exists a positive real number delta to the gamma, such that it says this has an ACC. But in particular, you can see that MLD is not contained in one epsilon to 1 for some epsilon percent 0. That's exactly what Professor Shokurov said. And clearly, that's also the question for us is that given gamma, can we find a precise value of epsilon gamma? And can we estimate, and like the most important thing there, can we estimate epsilon 0? And we see that a precise estimation will actually be very beneficial to the study of implicit geometry of algebraic varieties, like the effective variety of anti-empirical systems, as I mentioned before in Descartes' recent work. And let's see. So we do have this theorem. So I think that will probably answer your question. So we know that a lower bound of epsilon is actually computable when at the terminal, and the boundary set is finite, a finite of random coefficients. And the estimation is of the form epsilon is around gamma 0 divided by m, where gamma 0 is the minimal positive real number in the boundary set, and m is the numbers that which make such that m times gamma are integers. And actually, the non-terminal and arbitrary disease cases, I think they should also be computable, but we do not write that because we need to control the boundedness of n combinations. So we need to control that n for surfaces, and we also need to control the log canonical thresholds for threefolds. So in that case, so one way to do that is to go through some arguments as in the paper of Alexis Mori, but that will give us a bound, but maybe a bound which is just a very aggressive bound that maybe without any practical meaning. So I will just leave it here. So okay, but for epsilon 0, we actually have a nice bound here. Is that we can get bound 13. This probably like we can move the delta closer to 0 in bit. That's also so this is like some kind of optimal and some kind of interesting bound, and why that? Because I don't know, but I mean there are some this number does not really always appear in binary geometry. I mean, it may appear in some places like that, but currently not in binary geometry. But anyway, Yeah, it's 12 or 13, it's something like that, you know, the last stuff, but anyway, so, and we have such example, 1 over 13, 3, 4, 5, they take core singularity has MLD exactly 12 over 13. And that's my work with Xiao, so she is not an algorither, so she is a Google engineer and works, yeah, so when I was in Berkeley, I mean, I need to run some program to get this done, and I don't know how to run such program. So she helped me to run the program, and that's it. I believe there can be many, but yeah, I mean, I believe there can be many. Maybe you just multiply like 1 with 13k and maybe 3k plus 1, 4k minus 1. Maybe you can do things like that. I mean, yeah, I mean there can be some classification, and but anyway, yeah, there can be some classifications. And clearly, I want to ask this question. I mean, I don't know the answer here. That is 1 over 42 the optimal value of our epsilon when gamma is a standard set. So, well, and also in this 1 over 42, this clearly appears in many places, right? I mean, this appears in the means this 41 appears in the Salvetta sequence. And we also have this example where we have 41 over 42 as the minimal log discrepancy for Pearson's standard coefficient. I mean, I don't have a very practical way to answer this question at the moment. But I guess it is one thing to look through. And finally, let's see. So 1 over 30 is the one gap. That's true. But so this tells us that MLD, if it is in the 3 and equal to 12 over 13, this will satisfy the ACC. But I mean, we want to push this 12 over 13 forward. I mean, we know it's about ACC, but I mean, actually there is actually nothing inside the input. I mean, why can't we just push it a little forward and maybe something is given the input, but that is still in the C, and we are still happy about that. So, and this will be our next work, which is also an ongoing work with Yujie Luo. What we can prove now is that 5 over 6 is the second largest operating point of mlds in dimension 3. And in particular, this set will satisfy the ACC. And we do have examples on this, so I just take a few one, and again, there can be many of them. So, for example, I can write several different singularities. Let's say we have 1 over 17. I mean, they are all single, so they are very easy to check. In terms of 17, 4, 5, 6, and 3, 5, 7. Most of them is clearly not of form identity 3, 5, 7, and you will see that when the MLD is closer and closer to 5 over 6, the MLD structure should still behave very nice, but there can be lots of similarities when compared to the same MLD. The first one is 1. The largest is 1 because you can accumulate terminal. Terminal goes to 1, not
here. Of course, you're right. 1 is
yeah. Yeah, this is the second. This is the second largest. And yeah, so some of you may say, well, it's technical, and how is this fiber useful? Right? I mean, maybe it's not at the moment, but you will see that we find that there is a gap. We find there is a 12 over 13 here. Now we can move it to 5 over 6. So we get some bound, we get an implicit gap, we get the largest less than 1 point, and maybe we can get the largest second order point and do the same way and show that also satisfies the same. I mean, I'm just saying maybe, but maybe we can do this. And after we go to the second order, I mean, the point that should be 1/2. Maybe we can go through to the third order, which is 0, and we are done, right? So this, I mean, this might be purely imagination, but I mean, this might be one way to think about it. And I mean, again, I mean, 5 over 6 is still close to 1, but not so close to 1. So I bet it's maybe worth to go this way through a bit further. Question?
You know, is it aren't like we don't expect that the accumulation of MLD connects a clear MLDs in division 2, so you did the accumulation is type accumulation, so it's impossible to get finite time to the placebo.
I mean, that's what it is. So I mean, I believe that fundamental time you should get there. I mean, MLD are conjecture to go from low dimension, right? You need to change the boundary covariance set, but yeah. Right. So zero is so I mean so one half should be the largest the second order. So when second order I mean the accumulation point of accumulation points. When the third order I mean the accumulation point of accumulation point of accumulation points. And yeah, and I mean when we reach zero we're done and that's it. So that's what we're going to do it. And let's finally make a remark that 5 or 6 is actually more than 13 by that because first, it is the largest canonical threshold in dimension 3 that was shown by Shokurov. It is the largest surface LC threshold. I can't find the reference. I found that in like the paper of Professor Kala, but I can't find the original reference. So I just don't write any reference here. But anyway, and the third one is that it's also the largest point of threefold LC thresholds. And that's also shown by Shokurov. And fourthly, it is the largest MLD for non-canonical surface pairs with standard coefficient. And I believe this is actually something important, right? Because I mean, so first let's show the example, which is very simple, is that we just consider a surface pair, say 2, 1/2 H1 plus 2/3 H2. This pair has MLD equal to 5 over 6. And has standard coefficients. And I think Shokurov's conjecture of MLD says that like the coefficient set goes from the standard coefficients still to the standard coefficients, and the accumulation point will go to the MLDs with dimension 1 lower. And what we show, the 5 or 6 is the larger return. So this actually matches Shokurov's conjecture, and it is a positive evidence for his conjecture on points in dimension equal to 3 or higher. And I think that's it. And finally, let's say I just want to talk about this result in occasion of Shokurov, and there are also some interest in this number because today is May 6th. I have my 5 or 6 hour talk, and it's 5 out of the 6 hours of the day. So, and just as we mentioned yesterday, 72 is a good number, and it's also a good number because it's 60 divided by 5 over 6. So I think it's a good time to end my talk here with this result in celebration to Shokurov's 60 divided by 5 over 6 is to 72th birthday. So thank you for this. Yeah, 7 seconds, yeah. Yeah, 7 seconds, yeah, okay. Maybe my English is bad in something. So I hope you like it. And I would like to thank the organizer for making such arrangement for me. That's it.
So some kind of coming out of the narrative that just only just fails to be denied. You take the consciously that, not denied. It only fails.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like all this. I mean, I think most examples I can find at the moment. I mean, they are kind of single quotient or hyperquotient because because you know that like for all three for singularities, if you take the cover, it is likely. If the cover is terminal, then it's clearly a hyperquotient singularity. And that is also somewhat toric, and which yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Suppose without JAMI,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, probably. But I mean, I'm not in, but again, that's probably only for the case when the boundary is zero. Yeah. Yeah, the standard may also be okay, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess the computation can also be more complicated, I guess. What? What of what? If an egg is 506. That's it. I mean, 506 is right. I mean, okay. Right. So those was a sketch of the proofs. If you want to take a look, I can show as well if you want. I mean, those are the sketch of two of the. Yeah, I mean, like I have a 506 here, and it's out here, and you know. That's it. Anyway. Yeah, and probably I can also to I mean, but the figure, so these are the sketch of the proof. So this is like the sketch of proof of my pair with Han and Luo. The second result is like I mean, so we don't need to use some special pieces of our result to prove the full version and then to come back to prove the of the result. And also, I mean, like for the other one with Han is more complicated, but still it's more of a sketch line. Yeah. So, but anyway. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you say that. I mean, I do need to use some kind of classifications, but I mean, like there are also lots of math outside there. But anyway, it's complicated, so I was not planning to give a talk only with someone asking. So anyway, that's it.